Listen attentively, chosen one, for this is more than simply a narrative. It is a prophetic pattern for the divine reversal that is taking place in your life. You, who have been corralled, targeted, and forced into a spectacle by forces that feel they have complete control, are about to see the biggest plot twist in your history. They believe they were writing your last chapter, a tragedy about your demise, but they were really uncredited, unintentional ghostwriters for your wonderful testimony. The whole world has been watching as they methodically laid a trap, baited with warrants, fines, and public humiliation, all while God Almighty transformed their pit into your platform and their stumbling block into your stepping stone. What they intended as your personal joke is about to be exposed as a heavenly masterpiece, a divine comedy in which every plot against you becomes a setup for your ascension, and their collective ignorance is the punchline that will reverberate across millennia. They believe they were writing your destiny, but they were only taking notes in the margins of a tale God had already written about your unbelievable, amazing, and earth-shattering triumph. You were the majestic disruptor, not of chaos, but of their perverted serenity, the beautiful, unruly force of nature, directed not by erratic impulse, but by a divine mandate they could never understand. You not only survived their completely organized, multi-front attack, a perfectly orchestrated campaign from the highest seats of local authority, but you transformed it into an epic origin tale, a witness to the power of one soul united with God's purpose. The mayor, a man deluded by his own imagined power, the police, agents of a faulty system, the neighborhood council, a committee of whispers and judgment, they all formed an unholy alliance, convinced they had you entangled in their web of bureaucracy and fear. They imagined they were plotting your destruction, writing the ultimate, humiliating chapter of your turbulent life. However, in God's big cosmic play, they were only writing your spectacular premiere. Every warrant became a badge of pride, every citation a tribute to your fortitude, and every passive-aggressive, flashy notice foreshadowed their own coming irrelevance. You did not abandon their weapons. Rather, you gathered them as holy objects, prized trophies from a spiritual conflict you were certain you had already won. You saved them not just as tail fodder, but also as heavenly receipts, evidence of the obstacles you confronted and conquered. While they were meticulously, even obsessively, assembling a case against you in their earthly courts, you were busy constructing an empire out of their collective folly, a kingdom built on the ruins of their failed attacks. Imagine the utter ridiculousness of it all. They had official, taxpayer-funded meetings about you, replete with written minutes and detailed agendas, devoting hours of their precious time on this planet to planning against a single, spirit-led human. The mayor, in his arrogance, cleared his calendar, a timetable designed to rule a city, just to worry about you. The police chief, tasked with defending the city from serious harm, diverted valuable resources away from real crimes, redirecting patrols and man-hours to track your every step, as if your very presence was the biggest danger to public safety. And the neighborhood watch, a gang of self-appointed conformity enforcers, evolved into your personal paparazzi. They pursued you with fanatical zeal, chronicling your movements as if you were Hollywood royalty, their flashbulbs catching moments they felt were damning, but were really photographs of your unwavering elegance under pressure. All the while, you were the silent writer, the chosen historian of your own story. You were silently collecting notes, recording every misstep, overreach, and desperate behavior, knowing that these notes would one day serve as the basis for your testimony. The actual joke, the divine punchline they never saw coming, was that in their hasty attempt to extinguish your light, they ended up producing the exact behemoth they were terrified of. Before their circus of persecution started, you were just living your life as God had anointed and ordained. Perhaps your light was a bit too bright for them, or your reality was too genuine for their sterile, suburban ideal. But they made it personal. They turned a spiritual discomfort into an all-out worldly conflict. They declared you public enemy number one for what? Parking violations were a genuine test of your patience. Noise concerns stemmed from their discomfort with the sound of your delight. The very fact that you existed, thrived, and shone while refusing to conform to their bland, lifeless standards was your biggest offense in their eyes. It becomes even more meaningful. This was not a random series of poor luck or harassment. This was a well-planned campaign, a satanic flowchart with your name written at the top. It was a plot motivated by jealousy and fear. The mayor's nephew, by no accident, was the cop that was continually, almost ritualistically, knocking on your house and delivering their flimsy notices. The wife of the Homeowners Association president happened to work in the same permit office that strangely and repeatedly delayed your applications, causing bureaucratic bottlenecks where there should have been open doors. Isn't it interesting how those worldly ties align when the adversary attempts to create a cage around a child of God? They honestly felt they were being subtle, that their plans were too sophisticated for you to figure out. As if you didn't see the same 3 automobiles following you to and from work, like devoted but inept devils. As if early morning photographs of your property were taken at 6 a.m. Similar to a stalker's routine, it would go undetected. They severely undervalued your spiritual insight while significantly overestimating their own worldly cleverness. An error as ancient as history, committed by every Goliath who has ever encountered a David. And you, imbued with understanding beyond this world, became your own one-person intelligence agency, a spiritual watchman on the wall. Every whispered chat you overheard, every poorly disguised threat conveyed with a sugary grin, and every bizarre, accidental discovery that just happened to land in your mailbox, you chronicled it all. You were not collecting evidence for the sake of worldly vengeance, for wrath belongs to the Lord. No, you were creating a divine record because you realized a vital spiritual principle. Absurdity, when pushed far enough under God's careful eye, turns not only into art, but also into a compelling testimonial to deliverance. And the most wonderful part? They kept escalating. Their every step was an error. Each time you refused to break, each time you responded to their pressure with prayer and calm, they became more frantic, blatant, and utterly absurd. They were transforming their whole secret operation into the loud, unmistakable punchline of a narrative they never, ever intended to tell. In a display of sheer, theatrical hubris, the mayor ultimately began personally signing your infraction letters, almost as if he were autographing his own spiral into comedy, leaving his name on proof of his own obsession. The police chief started turning up to community meetings, not to speak, but to stare at you across the room, his silence telling volumes about his dissatisfaction. Without a single ounce of self-awareness, they had turned themselves from municipal officials to cartoon villains, stock characters in a vast story that you were silently, prayerfully crafting. Then the scene transformed. The tone shifted from petty tragedy to that of a sublime black comedy, a drama of celestial justice. You did not fight back in the manner that they had planned, or in the way that the rest of the world does. They had riot gear for wrath and legal arguments for litigation. They were expecting you to lose your cool. They waited for you to yell, threaten, or throw a single punch that would legitimize their whole campaign against you. Instead, you accomplished something considerably more frightening and powerful. You laughed, not the anxious, confined chuckle of someone on the verge of losing, not the bitter, cynical chuckle of someone who has lost all hope. This was different. This was a knowing, incisive, spirit-filled chuckle from someone who had just been shown the matrix code of the spiritual world. It was a chuckle that said, "I get it now. The joke isn't on me. The joke is this entire elaborate, pathetic attempt to curse what God has blessed." They had anticipated your fury, since rage is a carnal emotion that leads to blunders. But laughing, pure spiritual delight, brings insight. It's strength. It's a weapon. And with that supernatural clarity, you began seeing comedic gold. No, spiritual gold. Everywhere you looked. The persecution became your stuff. You started attending city council sessions, not to protest in fury, but to just sit in the front row, notepad in hand, smiling with God's peace that exceeds all understanding. They'd talk about new regulations and bylaws that were clearly designed with you in mind, and you'd simply take notes, sometimes giggling to yourself at their pure, unabashed arrogance. You became a live mirror for their deceit and idiocy, refusing to be intimidated and seeing their whole campaign as raw material for testimony they couldn't control, edit, or mute. The more you laughed and acted joyfully, the more the spiritual balance of power altered. Their phony assurance dissolved into perplexity, which finally flowered into real, visible anxiety. They came to understand something startling, something that shocked them to the core. You weren't simply surviving their assaults. You were flourishing on them. You were gaining strength from their push. Every citation they gave built up a future punchline in your tale. Each insult they leveled formed a line in your testimony. And every frantic, idiotic action on their part just contributed another magnificent chapter to the heavenly comedy spectacular you were creating in the spirit. Then there was your proof gathering, your painstaking documentation of their folly. Because, while they were busy playing checkers in the mud of local politics, you were running a game of 4D chess on a heavenly board with a comic, divine spin. You did not just store papers in a dusty box. You created a whole multimedia presentation, a digital monument to their stupidity. You had video recordings of police vehicles appearing wherever you walked, a proof to their preoccupation. You had crystal-clear audio recordings of concerned neighbors infusing their phony, sugary warmth with poorly disguised threats. You had screenshots of the mayor's earlier social media postings, which had aged worse than milk left in the scorching sun, showing his character long before he attacked you. You converted their persecution campaign into performance art, a live, breathing testament to God's faithfulness. A simple parking ticket served as a prop in your tale. A court summons served as a rehearsal for your public justification. You even began live tweeting your contacts with police enforcement, using their surveillance methods. And it caught fire. Your narrative and viewpoint went viral, not just locally, but all across the internet. After all, nothing spreads faster than the truth, particularly when it depicts systemic failure in stunning 4K quality. The neighborhood Facebook group, which was once a private echo chamber for slander and complaint, has evolved into your own comedy lab and digital amphitheater. They'd make angry, long complaints against you, and you'd react not with rage, but with razor-sharp, spirit-inspired sarcasm and humor, so masterfully made that even your most passionate detractors couldn't help but love it. You single-handedly transformed their echo chamber into your stage, and the real beauty of it was that the moderators, who were also members of their clique, were unable to prohibit you. You were not violating any of their regulations. You were just being devastatingly and wonderfully smart. But when you began publicly applauding them, you actually destroyed their spirits and fractured their unified front. Sincere, serious, and addressed by name. Thank you, Mayor Johnson, for gifting me 6 solid months of incredible, unparalleled material for my testimony. A special shout out to Officer Martinez, who has proven to be my most dedicated and loyal fan. A heartfelt thanks to the HOA board for meticulously documenting my every move. Your detailed records have been invaluable for my work. You used gratitude as a weapon. You directed their monitoring to your marketing department. Then came the moment of divine judgment, when the truth was revealed on a worldwide scale. Someone, perhaps a nervous, low-level intern at City Hall, entered your name into a Google search field. So there it was. Your Wikipedia page bears witness not to their story, but to God's. It read like the setup to the biggest joke in the history of local governance. Comedian and social commentator known for transforming relentless citywide harassment into award-winning, faith-filled comedy. There it was, in plain and white for everyone to see, complete with flawless citations, connections to authentic news items, and great evaluations of your underground performances in which you tested the same content they had so graciously and naively written for you. The tsunami of terror that swept through their ranks was almost art in itself. Emergency meetings were immediately called behind closed doors. Legal teams hurried, scouring legal books for a loophole. And somewhere, in a sterile, fluorescent-lit meeting room, a very serious, very silly topic was raised. Can we sue someone for telling the truth? The response, they would soon learn, was a loud no. The First Amendment, a principle established by God, is a beautiful and powerful thing, especially when wielded as a divine sword to roast your oppressors with such surgical, undeniable precision that academics and theologians alike begin publishing papers on your comedic, spirit-led method. You weren't simply making jokes anymore. You were creating a historical record or lasting witness. Each joke you gave had receipts. Their receipts. Every callback in your act referred to a recorded, verifiable occurrence. You cleverly transformed their meticulously designed paper trail, which they meant to employ to bury you in bureaucracy, into your own paper chase, a treasure map leading to their public disgrace. They intended to bury you beneath a pile of paperwork, but you utilized their own papers to create a spectacular monument to their incompetence, one that people were now paying to see. The aftermath was wonderful, a lovely taste of divine justice. The mayor's approval rating started to decline, then plummeted. Not because you discovered some terrible, hidden wrongdoing, but because you effectively and publicly made him seem like a walking joke, a fumbling idiot. He became a recurrent, adored character in your play, the real incarnation of stupid, arrogant power. Soon enough, his moniker became local slang for inept leadership. His own grandkids, both innocent and honest, were reciting your stuff about him over family gatherings. That's when he realized he'd lost something much more important and precious than an election. He had lost the story. God took it from him and gave it to you. And now we are at the pinnacle of it all. Your comedy special, your big testimony, isn't just coming out. It's exploding like a truth bomb over the cultural landscape. Citation needed. A 90-minute humorous and prophetic analysis of how a whole city's power system did its hardest to demolish one guy, only to spectacularly smash itself in the process. Every joke is supported by incontrovertible proof. Every chuckle from the audience is based on verifiable reality. And every single one of them, every award, every applause, was theirs before you appropriated, sanctified, and immortalized it. Every punchline had the weight of evidence. Every wave of laughter was accompanied by their own documentary. This was never just stand-up comedy. It was a masterclass in spiritual warfare, a lesson in turning tyranny into a divine opportunity. The trailer alone broke the internet. The iconic shot of you standing defiantly and joyfully in front of City Hall, holding a towering, almost comical stack of their violations, delivering the legendary line, "They gave me all this material for free. The least I could do is share it with the world." The mayor's office, in a final act of predictable foolishness, tried to have the trailer removed, and in doing so, they handed you the greatest marketing gift imaginable, the Streisand effect. At this stage, it should be named after you, because you weren't just doing comedy, you were doing public justice. Each chuckle from the crowd became a verdict. Every applaud break was a moment of public vindication. You had effectively transformed their courtroom into your stage, and the jury consisted of anybody who had ever been steamrolled, intimidated, or silenced by petty dictators with too much power and far too little knowledge. Before we get into the generational legacy and global movement that arose from the ashes of their attack, if this story of divine vindication resonates with you, please subscribe to God Connection right now. Join a community that believes that faith is the ultimate victory. If you feel driven to invest in this ministry of encouragement and truth, please use the Super Thanks button to make a $10 gift. Consider it your own citation-needed gift, a proclamation that you value truth and trust in God's ability to turn any situation around. Your contribution allows us to continue creating and sharing messages like this with folks all around the globe who need to hear it. Your testimony resulted in a symphony of heavenly justice. The police chief quietly resigned, not due to a formal internal inquiry, but because he couldn't go any place in the city, the grocery store, the gas station, the restaurant, without someone cheerfully repeating your piece about him. The HOA board, that den of petty tyrants, was utterly disbanded when your viral story about their emergency meeting about the color of your yard decorations went worldwide. And the mayor, discreetly announced that he would not run for re-election, claiming vague, personal reasons. Everyone knew. Everyone in town knew the personal reason was you. You had transformed him, a once powerful guy, into an everlasting, amusing meme. But, driven by a greater mission, you didn't stop there. The humor was just the first act, a prelude to a far larger symphony. You started a podcast called Civic Duty, which you renamed Kingdom Duty, in which you examine local government problems around the nation with the same surgical accuracy and spirit-led comedy that you used to deconstruct the anti-you campaign. Mayors from other cities began sweating. HOA boards around the country reconsidered their strict regulations. Police stations started hosting required training seminars on de-escalation and public perception, which was actually code for how not to become comedy material for a person of faith. You became a well-paid consultant. Cities, the exact institutions who attempted to kill you, are now physically hiring you to analyze their policies and point out the absurdity before the general public. You used the same energy they used to try to kill you and, by God's grace, transformed it into a force for rebuilding damaged systems, all while keeping the comedy sharp and the truth sharper. Because you know a powerful secret: nothing destroys hubris quicker than having people laugh at their own foolishness. Your Wikipedia article, the digital monument to your win, continued to evolve. Activist, author, consultant, documentary subject. Each new title was another middle finger, led by grace, to those who earlier attempted to reduce you to a simple problem to be eliminated. You didn't simply survive their organized attack. You commercialized, branded, and repurposed it into your own battle against systemic ignorance and spiritual depravity in high places. Law schools from coast to coast invited you to give guest lectures with titles like How to Avoid Creating Your Own Worst Enemy, a legal and spiritual perspective. Future lawyers, judges, and politicians studied your case to learn what happens when worldly power is abused against someone who refuses to break, someone who is rooted in unshakable faith. Your case studies were based on your personal experiences. Your visual aids were their own damning documentation. You transformed their harassing playbook into a victory manual. They believed they were erasing you from the community. Instead, God inscribed you in the annals of history. Students will study the comedian versus the city case for decades, if not centuries, as a landmark, precedent-setting example of how institutional harassment can implode in the most spectacular, public fashion when its target has both a divine sense of humor and a spine forged from holy steel. And possibly the most beautiful, lyrical conclusion of all, the youngsters in your former neighborhood see you as a hero. The very streets where they tried to make you feel unwelcome are now filled with young people who saw what you did, witnessed your testimony, and learned a priceless lesson. No bully, whether a peer on the playground, a politician in a high office, or a petty official with a clipboard, has the right to bully them into silence. Meanwhile, the mayor's Wikipedia page, his digital legacy, now includes a permanent, infamous subsection titled The Comedy Special Incident. It is the final, indelible footnote to a battle they were certain they would win, but that you, through faith and wit, turned into the performance of your life. His legacy will be eternally linked to the moment he failed to shatter you. The police chief's job biography now ends with the embarrassing footnote: resigned following satirical portrayal in nationally acclaimed comedy special. The HOA president packed his bags and moved to another state. But even there, he can't avoid the memes. Your comedy special is more than simply entertainment. It's proof. This is a historical document. It's a big, unmistakable, blazing warning sign for any small-minded official who feels they can harass a citizen, a child of God, without consequences. It serves as a light of hope for anybody who has ever been pushed about, ostracized, and taught to accept their destiny. No, your tale cries. You don't have to accept it. You can document it. You can shape it. And you can make it into something strong. You can make it into art. You may benefit from it. You can make it history. You can. You can. You can. And without even attempting, you started a movement. Citation Needed became more than just a title. It was a rallying cry, a code phrase for anybody suffering municipal or institutional harassment. Support groups were founded in your name. Your tale spurred the creation of legal defense funds. You demonstrated on a worldwide scale that it was possible to fight back with wit instead of wrath, creativity instead of devastation, and unbreakable, God-given evidence rather than frantic, meaningless assertions. Other comedians, artists, and innovators started following your amazing pattern. Your encounter spawned a whole new genre. Bureaucracy Bites Back. Comedy Central produced a sitcom based on your premise. Netflix approached us about producing the ultimate documentary. Publishers engaged in a furious, multi-million-dollar bidding war for the rights to your novel. The system, the society that once attempted to delete you, is now unable to stop advertising your name. The irony is so deep and dense that you could cut it with one of their previous parking violations. And what really hurts them, what keeps them up at night, is that you never became cruel. You never sank to their level. Your humor, your testimony, is as keen as a surgeon's knife, yet it remains clean. You focus on the dysfunctional system rather than the damaged person. You ridicule the viewpoint, not the individual. That is why it is so devastatingly successful. They cannot dismiss you as simply another bitter, furious voice. You are a joyous warrior, a happy conqueror, and your serene power frightens them more than your fury ever could. Your effect transformed the city that attempted to kick you out. Public pressure and shame compelled them to enact new transparency legislation. One of them, dubbed the Comedian Clause by the public, required that every municipal meeting be videotaped and made public within 24 hours. The same individuals who formerly plotted in secret to bring you down can no longer keep anything hidden from anybody. You didn't simply win your particular struggle. You transformed the whole battlefield for everyone who comes after you. And now for the ultimate, lovely, glorious punchline. They spent hundreds of thousands of dollars in public money in a frantic, futile effort to drive you out of town. You, in turn, converted their investment in your failure into millions of dollars in income and unrivaled cultural impact. They intended to obliterate you. Instead, you etched yourself into history. They wanted you forgotten. You made them notorious. Every relevant Wikipedia page now has the real narrative, which reads like pure, heavenly comedic gold. When the previous mayor delivered his retirement address, he tried frantically, terribly, to avoid speaking your name. It did not matter. Someone at the back of the audience yelled one of your most famous catchphrases. The whole audience burst out laughing, and he was forced to stand there, at his own goodbye ceremony, listening to the people he formerly ruled repeat the exact person he had fought so hard to eliminate. That is not just defeat. That is poetic justice paired with a wonderful laugh track. And you? You're still living in the same home they fought so hard to get you out of. Only now is it a landmark. Pilgrims of humor and seekers of inspiration come from all over to snap pictures in front of it. It has become a temple to the day when one individual, aided by God, transformed a whole city's grudge into the greatest comedy ever told. The home worth in your area did not simply rise, it skyrocketed. Not because of a new developer's idea or a multi-million-dollar civic redevelopment plan, but because your street, your house, has been designated as a cultural monument. People want to dwell in the same location where history occurred, where a single individual, armed with faith and a camera phone, outmaneuvered a whole system and made it into a worldwide joke. The irony is so delightful. The same HOA that previously saw you as a blemish on their immaculate neighborhood now brazenly promotes your legacy as a valuable selling factor. Live in the neighborhood of the legendary comedy special, they claim in their real estate advertising, carefully missing the bit where they were the story's villains, attempting to drive you out. Its sheer boldness and lack of guilt is almost commendable. Nonetheless, you know the truth, and they are aware that you do. They can never forget their own shame. Every time you win another award, your name goes viral on social media for a sold-out tour or another nice review. It hurts them all over again. Each headline, each award, is a blazing neon reminder of the day they set out to ruin you and unintentionally gave you the keys to your kingdom. They once worked together as a single force to portray you as the villain, the troublemaker, and the outsider. But you reverse that script with such divine power that they are now confined to permanent supporting parts in your tale, serving as setups for your punchlines. And this punchline, this witness, is one of the few that returns year after year, like a heavenly dividend from the bank of poetic justice. However, the narrative goes far deeper than the mere joy of personal achievement. Beyond the fame, the money, and the sweet pleasure of vindication, you demonstrated something ageless and deadly to the established quo. You demonstrated that documentation trumps intimidation. You demonstrated that comedy, founded in pleasure, dismantles harassment quicker than rage ever could. You demonstrated that ingenuity can reduce cruelty to harmless, funny shreds. You not only outlasted them, but you completely rewrote the engagement rules. And now, whether they confess it or not, everyone in a position of authority must follow the laws that God created through you. Law enforcement agencies across the country now include the comedian effect in their official training manuals, a blunt, cautionary module warning about how targeting an individual in the age of instant social media can result in a public relations disaster of epic, career-ending proportions. City governments, having been burnt once before by your example, are now hiring experts to evaluate their rules for viral risk, scared of unwittingly generating the next online folk hero via their own stupidity. HOA boards, formerly eager to show their petty, sad power, are now hesitant to issue that nitpicky violation notice, fearing they will make someone else famous. You transformed not just the political landscape of your city, but also the way power is wielded and contested in the contemporary period. Meanwhile, young comedians, artists, and believers have used your story to inspire their own lives. Comedy workshops now have entire modules like finding humor in harassment, turning pain into punchlines, and evidence as entertainment. They study how you meticulously cataloged every petty infraction, every passive-aggressive encounter, not just to protect yourself legally, but also to transform those moments of trial into spiritual gold when the time came. You developed a form of resistance that does not need rioting or fury. It simply takes patience, perseverance, and a devastatingly acute, God-given sense of timing. Academics and theologians have transformed you into a full-fledged area of study. University and seminary schools give papers with names like Humor as Resistance, a case study in municipal mockery and divine justice. Sociologists investigate how you altered the power dynamic without ever speaking out. Political scientists point to you as conclusive evidence that contemporary power may be challenged not just via conventional protest, but also through well-documented, spirit-led satire. Historians are already using your name in conversations about how humor has influenced social and spiritual movements throughout the years. And throughout it all, you've progressed well beyond being merely a comic. You are now a cultural force, a live case study, a warning to the mighty and a guiding light for the weak. You have become live evidence that, even in the most lopsided wars, wit led by faith may be sharper and more powerful than any weapon. You've given them a road plan for transforming injustice into influence, harassment into headlines, and cruelty into a profession. What began as a basic local power struggle has evolved into a worldwide story about faith and persistence. Somewhere, right now, in an office full of suits and terrified interns, a municipal official is pointing to a screen showing your tale and saying, "Let's make absolutely sure this never, ever happens to us." But it's too late. The moment they misjudged you, the moment they believed you could be scared into silence, the game changed, not only for you, but for everyone who will ever suffer the same petty, soul-crushing tyranny. You did not just win. You irrevocably changed the battlefield. And the very best part is that you accomplished it all while having others laugh so hard they wept. You transformed your life into the finest type of joke, one in which the punchline smacks the powerful squarely between the eyes, leaving the audience feeling stronger, braver, and more optimistic for having heard it. The comedy special was simply the first part, with a tremendous opening performance that might have easily served as the conclusion. But instead, It laid the groundwork for something far larger, something generational. That hour on stage was more than simply a performance. It was the start of a career, a movement, and a societal upheaval that you could never have foreseen. The book deal followed, and it was a huge, profoundly personal memoir that was equal parts comedy, cautionary tale, and step-by-step guide to deconstructing petty tyranny with just a pen, a camera, and an unshakable, God-given sense of humor. Every chapter pulled back the veil, revealing in graphic detail how each minor law, ludicrous infraction, and backhanded official notice created a foundation for your God-built kingdom. Then comes the documentary series, which is now in pre-production with Oscar-winning filmmakers vying for the opportunity to capture the full extent of your change. They are meticulously piecing together the mountain of footage you had been collecting for years. Grainy city council clips, shaky cell phone videos of police encounters, archived HOA emails, and brand new interviews with the very people who once conspired against you, but now sheepishly, shamefully admit they were misinformed. Streaming giants are lining up, ready to bid, because they know this isn't just a story, it's the story. A real-life David versus Goliath story in which David not only wins, but also transforms the whole struggle into a worldwide, viral comedy. And then there's the masterclass, your masterfully produced online course, turning harassment into art and testimony, is more than simply comedic coaching. It's a tool set for spiritual and emotional survival in a world where power often lurks beneath the bland facade of bureaucracy. You take people through the whole process, including how to chronicle exchanges without losing your cool, how to turn raw, righteous indignation into relatable, therapeutic comedy, and how to create a platform that makes oppressors wish they had never learned how to spell your name. However, despite the plaudits, the multi-million-dollar contracts, and the dizzying swirl of press tours and sold-out arenas, your true, long-lasting triumph is cultural and spiritual. You've sparked a holy defiance in a whole generation. People from many walks of life, students, single parents, small business owners, and pastors, have been chronicling their own problems and seeing divine comedy in them. You've made it quite evident that laughing is more than simply a coping mechanism. It's a means of fighting back. You've shown that, when used correctly and prayerfully, comedy may be sharper than any weapon and much more damaging to the enemy's goals than any furious outburst. Now, in municipal halls around the country, your face is placed on the wall, not in respect, but as a warning icon, a quiet, forceful reminder to every official, every staffer. Remember what happened when they tried to silence the comedian. Some towns display your portrait in their break rooms. Others show it in training facilities. All convey the same hushed, horrified message. Don't let this happen here. Your case is now essential reading for municipal ethics training classes. Entire modules go into great detail about how the constant persecution of one individual turned into a globally renowned fiasco. Bureaucrats are now watching tapes of your past city council sessions and reading the actual documents made about you, figuring out where their predecessors went so tragically wrong. You've actually become the standard example of institutional failure and supernatural reversal. Your narrative is printed in manuals, studied in schools, and discussed at conferences. Back in your own neighborhood, the transition is hysterically funny. The streets that once whispered vicious stories about you now chant your name proudly, if only for the power it offers them. Local coffee shops provide the comedian's brew, a dark roast named in your honor. Every day, tour buses full of visitors pass by your home, with the guide pointing out the historic place where it all started, while cameras click away through tinted windows. And the same people who formerly signed petitions demanding your removal now approach you at community gatherings, beaming broadly, wrapping their arms around you, and presenting you to their friends as my famous neighbor. The hypocrisy is so thick that it could be mined. And, of course, you do, transforming their blatant flip-flopping into an endless source of amazing, new content. But here's the twist. It's the spiritual judo technique that gets under their skin the most. You're not bitter. You do not lash out. You don't harbor animosity. You thank them, publicly. Sincerely. In every interview, panel discussion, and podcast appearance, you make an effort to give them credit. You tell the world that without their persistent, clumsy, unrelenting pestering, you may not have discovered your real calling. You explain that without their towering, jaw-dropping stupidity, you would not have had such flawless, tailor-made content. They did not wreck your life. Rather, they set you on the path to success. That thankfulness, that real, heartfelt recognition of their essential part in your achievement, is the one thing they cannot oppose. It hurts them more intensely than any insult could. And this brings us to the central, everlasting lesson, the truth at the heart of your testimony. When worldly power attempts to crush you, don't simply fight. Change. Don't just fight back. Make something beautiful out of the conflict. Don't be satisfied with just surviving. Instead, utilize the experience to create something that will remain forever. Because the instant you convert their campaign against you into your most valuable asset, you have irrevocably changed the game. You have shown to the world that what they envisioned as your end may be the most stunning, God-ordained beginning. The special was only the beginning. The book, video, and masterclass are all merely chapters in a broader tale about perseverance, creative liberty, and the divine art of transforming your adversaries into unaware, unpaid co-authors of your triumph. And now, long after the headlines have faded, the lesson will live on in policy manuals, stand-up acts, and academic curricula. And it will remain in the thoughts of anybody who has ever been instructed to sit down, be quiet, and accept it. Because you didn't just survive. You rewrote the rules. And now, the whole globe is reading it. Thrive so thoroughly, fearlessly, and magnificently that each stride forward is a living monument to their failure. A reminder chiseled not in stone, but in your ongoing achievement, contagious laughter, and unwavering unwillingness to fade into the background. Allow each standing ovation you earn to be an echo of their failure. Let every prize that gleams on your mantle serve as a mirror into which they are compelled to stare, reflecting the unavoidable reality of their foolishness. They attempted to destroy you, but all they could do was make you difficult to ignore. You didn't simply survive. You seized their weapons, rid them of their evil via prayer, and repurposed them as means of creation. Each reference becomes a prop. Every ordinance became a setup. Every half-baked, baseless claim became a headline under your control. You grabbed their whole arsenal and transformed it into your stage setup. You didn't avoid their blows. You grabbed them in midair, polished them until they sparkled, and sold tickets to see you return them as perfectly timed punchlines. You didn't simply transform their insults into applause. You turned them into a screaming, never-ending, deafening applause that followed you from theater to theater, city to city. And in doing so, you demonstrated to everyone that they could witness something they never thought possible. Harassment does not have to result in tragedy. It might end in victory. It has the potential to end in art. It may conclude with you, lighted up under a spotlight, microphone in hand, giving the type of testimony that makes people laugh till they cry, because they know the tale is genuine, and because your success gives them hope for their own. You demonstrated that sometimes the sharpest, purest form of justice is not served in a courtroom. It is served with the sound of thousands of people laughing at the same individuals who attempted to crush you. The mayor, once so certain in his control over the city, now sits in the shadows of humiliation, his name eternally tied to a scandal he never saw coming. The police chief, once so certain in his power, now finds his career reduced to a cautionary tale, unable to find a badge any place that would accept him. The HOA board members, who were formerly brave enough to knock on your door with smug grins and clipboard threats, now dart their gaze away at the grocery store, hoping you don't see them. Nonetheless, you visit the nation. Your name fills marquees. You turn their errors into masterpieces, city after city, night after night. However, the legacy you are creating goes beyond the chuckles. It is via your teachings that you are teaching others how to do the same, demonstrating that the struggle does not have to be waged with fists or rage. You developed a unique kind of protest art that cures the protester while undermining the oppressor's power. Your technique not only exposes absurdity, but it also causes the oppressor to see that absurdity being repeated, remade, and memorialized in a manner that they can never, ever erase. Your Wikipedia page is more than just a bio, it's a plan. It's a step-by-step plan for anybody facing the harsh, bureaucratic reality of institutional harassment. Document everything. Discover the God-given comedy hidden inside the brutality. Share the tale so loudly and widely that it utterly overpowers their version of events. You transform their power play into your platform, and their plan into your stagecraft. You didn't simply claim a personal win. You created a paradigm of spiritual battle that anybody might follow, a technique of resistance via scorn and disclosure.